Okay, so I don't know if anyone's gonna watch this or fucking care about this, but I don't really care. I just want to vent about this fucking movie. Mute is the new Netflix fucking uh, piece of trash that they dumped because I guess it couldn't get a cinema release or some shit. It's by Duncan Jones, who did good movies prior to this. Um, he did Moon and Source Code and Warcraft, which, you know, for a video game movie is a piece of fucking art. Um, you know, it wasn't terrible, but this movie is fucking terrible. Um, I don't even know where to begin with this. It honestly, it starts off pretty strong. I honestly think the first 30 minutes or so of this movie are actually pretty strong, and Alexander Skarsgard, or however you pronounce his name, he doesn't exactly fit the character, I don't think, but I think he does the best job that he possibly could. He gives it his all. I think someone who was probably more suited to more sort of like subtle roles like this, someone like, you know, Ryan Gosling springs to mind. But he obviously, I'm almost certain he probably got this script, you know, passed across his agent's desk at some point, and he turned it down because, you know, Blade Runner. Because I know they were kind of making this at the same time. And the female love interest, whose name I will have to look up because she is this is her first movie. And Duncan Jones has pretty much basically destroyed her career on her first movie. Not just because this movie is terrible, because it is fucking awful, but also because he gave her an introducing credit, and in Hollywood that fucking kills your career. No actor who's ever had an introducing credit at the beginning of their name has ever made it. It's like some weird curse. It happened to the kid in like From Dusk Till Dawn and a fucking shitload of other people. But she was really good. I liked her. A lot of people were criticizing the romance in this. I think the romance was honestly pretty good. The effects are honestly pretty good, but there's nothing really interesting about the city that the movie takes place in. It's kind of just sort of, you know, a mixture of like Blade Runner and The Fifth Element and like, you know, well, actually, the first thing I thought was that Netflix series, Altered Carbon, that show. But the city in that is way more interesting than the city in this. It's just kind of like a Coruscant from fucking Star Wars. It's visually interesting in that the effects are pretty cool, but there's nothing really stand outish about it. There's no sort of, it's not like in I know it's pretty unfair and stereotypical to compare this to 2049, but for example, in 2049, I mean, they're both cyberpunk movies, and it's obviously what Duncan Jones was trying to do with this was recreate the magic that Blade Runner 1 and 2, or mostly 1, created. But like Las Vegas in that movie looks amazing. Just the design of it and the whole thing, it stands out. It's memorable. It's iconic. This will never be iconic. I don't think this is a sort of Blade Runner thing where, oh, you know, everyone hated it when it came out, but now everybody likes it, you know, like Predator and movies like that. I don't think this movie. The most frustrating thing about this movie is there actually is probably a half decent sci-fi thriller in this. Nothing masterful, but there's probably a half decent sci-fi thriller in this if you cut out about 40 minutes of this like 2.5 hour fucking movie. Or I think it might only be 2 hours, but it fucking feels like 2.5. Like even more so than Blade Runner did. And don't get me wrong, Blade Runner 2 does feel the length that it is, but this movie feels much longer. And there's nowhere like there's nowhere near as many sort of establishing shots or anything like that. For a movie about a guy who doesn't talk, there's a whole lot of fucking talking in this movie. From Paul Rudd and Justin Theroux that the movie keeps cutting to, and it feels like a different fucking movie. Like it's not just that it sort of follows Alexander Skarsgard sort of looking for his girlfriend who's disappeared mysteriously one night. Like she went to sleep with him, and then he wakes up the next morning and she's not there, and he doesn't know how to find her. And he's Amish apparently, so he doesn't do technology. So he can't look her up on a computer or anything like that because he doesn't know how to use it. And even though he uses a phone, he can only text because he can't speak. So he tries to call up his girlfriend's mother, and he can't get onto her. So he just kind of like tracks her down in the phone book by copying a number, and that whole storyline with him and his girlfriend, or searching for his girlfriend, it has a very Drive-esque sort of like feel to it. But there's really no reason why this movie is a cyberpunk movie at all, other than, you know, like aesthetic reasons. You know, like they work in a strip club that's like a robot strip club, but there's no reason for it to be a robot strip club. It could have easily have just been a regular strip club in like modern day Berlin. You know, there's no reason why it needs to be like neo Berlin, other than it's almost a gimmick. Actually, it's almost like oh, you know, what would make this movie cool? It's like a crime thriller, but it's, you know, it's set in a cyberpunk dystopian Blade Runner future. It's actually set in the same universe as Moon, which probably leads to one of the only sort of really memorable scenes in the film. Is getting into spoilers here, but you shouldn't fucking watch this movie. So, you know, just look up this scene on YouTube because it's fucking awesome. Is Leo, the main character, the mute guy, is looking. He's at a diner and he's looking at a TV screen and the news is on, and it's got Sam Rockwell playing his character Sam Bell from that movie, and he's in a courtroom, and he's like, oh, my name is Sam Bell, and then like another Sam Rockwell stands up from behind him and fucking goes, fuck you, you're not Sam Bell, I'm Sam Bell. And then like another one pops up and goes, I'm Sam Bell, and they like have this and it's like literally less than like 2 minutes. It's probably like a 30-second, 40-second scene. Duncan Jones was talking about how he was going to have like, it was going to like be the epilogue to Moon. It's not. It really doesn't give you any closure as to, well, not that it needed any closure, but it doesn't really tell you anything else about the character other than it just establishes that this is the same universe. And that was in the first 30 minutes, within the first 30 minutes, which is why part of the reason why I think those first 30 minutes are strong. But like when she first goes missing, it sort of does do a really good job of building this mystery, and it keeps cutting to Paul Rudd and Justin Theroux, who are two like black market surgeons, I guess is what you call them. I think Paul Rudd, it's not really well established, but I think that Paul Rudd is supposed to be a AWOL American like Marine medic. They sort of like, it's established but not very well. I don't think they did a very good job of that. I had to sort of, I don't know, it was like putting apart a puzzle, but putting together a puzzle. But anyway, and the other guy is he's like a child's like prosthetic guy. Like he puts like bionic limbs on people. And again, you know, there's no reason for that to be sci-fi. We have bionic limbs now. He could have just easily have been that kind of surgeon who does that. But anyway, so it keeps cutting to them. And Paul Rudd is supposed to be our main villain, which I really only figured out halfway through the movie, because I was like, I thought he was meant to be some kind of failed comic relief. It almost feels like the scenes with those two guys from a different film, like for the first half of the movie. It just keeps cutting to them, and they're like, they'll be like patching together some like Russian mobster who's like paid them to do surgery so they don't have to take him to the hospital, and he like they'll just be like joking around and basically acting like obnoxious assholes, like people from a Paul Rudd movie, and they've got like stupid like really bad like hair pieces on, like Paul Rudd has got a really bad like 70s like porn stash thing going on, and Justin, I was going to call him Justin Trudeau, yeah, the Prime Minister of Canada is in this movie. Justin Theroux is like wearing like a fucking pedo glasses and a fucking Steve Jobs wig, and he's wearing pedo glasses because he's a pedophile. Yeah. That's another spoiler. That's where the movie lost me. Around about 30-40 minute mark, probably the 40-minute mark, I started to go, oh, I think this movie might not be that good. And then they drop a bombshell that Justin Trudeau is a pedophile, red pilled. No, Justin Theroux basically has been he's been filming the little girls in his like clinic, like getting changed and shit. And Paul Rudd, whose character has a daughter, walks in. I think he's just like there to just like get him to do another job with him or something like that. And he walks in and he sees all these fucking cameras everywhere. And he's like, "What the fuck is this?" And he walks into like his office and he sees like recorded videos of of like little girls, and the fucking guy, like he fucking runs up to him and he's just like beating the shit out of him, and he's like, "You sick fuck," and all this type of stuff, and then Justin Theroux just goes, "Oh yeah, I'm sorry, I filmed the little girls naked, I won't do it again." And then Paul Rudd's like, "Oh yeah, okay, that's fair enough, I believe you, just don't go near my daughter." And it barely comes up again. It does come up again, but there's no real payoff to it. It's like the only like the point that it serves in the plot is to because normally Paul Rudd like just leaves his fucking girl to be his like little girl to be babysitted by like prostitutes or some shit, and Justin Theroux is there when he needs to do something where he'll get into the conflict with our main character, and he like the only reason that whole pedophile subplot exists is so he will be like, "Oh no, I'll take her with me for, you want to go for a little ride, Cindy," or whatever her name is. I can't even remember what the little girl's name is. Kathy, I think. I could be wrong, but anyway, and that's the only reason it's there. And then it kind of comes back at the end, but there's really no like it's sort of just like, it's almost like Duncan Jones kind of wanted to put some sort of gritty edge into this movie, and he failed epically because he doesn't know how to handle that kind of material, or he does, but he just in this aspect failed, because I think he is a really good filmmaker. He's proved that he can be a really good filmmaker. He made Warcraft watchable. That's like the miracle work. And I think the biggest problem with this movie is that it's one of those passion projects that, like Avatar, he's been trying to make this fucking movie for like 15 years. He wanted it to be his first movie, and then, stuff happened. He couldn't. It's been in development hell. And it started off as just a crime movie, and you can really tell it really should have just been a crime movie. It shouldn't have had anything to do with cyberpunk or anything. Like, it shouldn't have been trying to be Blade Runner. It should have just been like a neo-noir mystery thriller thing. And Paul Rudd should not be the main character, the main antagonist, because he sucks in this movie. He's supposed to be, particularly towards the end, he's supposed to be like menacing. And he just comes off as a dick. Like, he says like awful shit to people, but it doesn't come off as like, it doesn't come off like, for example, I know I suck Michael Shannon's dick a lot, but Michael Shannon in The Shape of Water is a dick to everybody in that movie. He's pretty much a dick to everybody. But he's a really likable character in that he portrays himself as being really menacing and really, like, just all around butt fuck evil. Like, he gets more evil and more hateable as the film goes along. But Paul Rudd is hateable for a different reason. He's hateable because he just comes off as being obnoxious. And that's, like, probably not what you want your villain, you know, to be. You probably don't want him to be obnoxious. And I don't think that's what Paul Rudd was going for. I honestly think that Paul Rudd was trying his best, but he, again, was miscast. Justin Theroux was fine in his role, I thought. Yeah, like, everybody in this is trying. There's nobody that's, like, phoning it in. Like, those are pretty much the only big names in the movie. Are those, well, Sam Rockwell. There's a guy, there's kind of like another subplot that doesn't really go anywhere. With, like, these two British gangsters, and one of them's played by, oh, that's my phone going off for some reason. There's just, wait, okay, that won't happen again now. So one of them's played by the Billy Tyler's boyfriend in Doctor Who, in the Christopher Eccleston ones. The, like, black guy, he's one of them, and there's like a white guy, and, you know, there's no real reason for their characters to be there. I think they're supposed to be a red herring, but it doesn't really go down that route long enough for it to be, like, worthwhile to explore, or even have them in the film. But, like, when it goes back to Leo, I kind of did like that character. Whenever it goes back to them, although most of the movie honestly seems like it focuses on Paul Rudd and Justin Theroux, and they gave them pretty much all the dialogue in the film, and their plot fucking goes nowhere anyway. Like, I understand, like, you have to have those characters in there for this story, but really, it like, they could have been in there far less. I think it would have been actually much better if, you know, they sort of weren't introduced until later, because I think that would have actually added to the mystery a lot more, because you kind of already know that they're involved in it somehow, that they had some, hand in her disappearance, not only because it keeps cutting to them, but because they're like these black market surgeons that do shady shit for gangsters. And yeah, I think they should have just been like, they should have come in at probably like the second or third act. But every time it goes back to him, the movie is honestly a pretty competent, pretty good movie, just, for entertainment's sake. Not that it really has anything to say, or like, it doesn't have to. These kind of movies don't really have to. Particularly, like, I think if you're making a film sci-fi, and you don't have anything to say, you kind of, I don't know, it like I said, that doesn't, you can make it perfectly, like Predator, for example, doesn't have anything to say, but it seems like he was going for like a Blade Runner kind of sci-fi thing, and those movies usually do have something to say. Like Blade Runner has something to say about, what it means to be human and all that kind of shit. But this movie is kind of just, like a pulpy, it should be like a pulpy fun thing, but at the same time, it's trying to be like one of those art, like, what are they called? Like art house action films, like Drive or something like that. And I'm not sure if Drive has anything to say, but it's definitely a better movie than this. And it's like at the end is kind of really, well, it ends about fucking like 30 or 20 minutes after it should have ended, firstly. But like the ending kind of leaves you feeling really like horrible and sour, and it's not that that's a bad thing, but it just, I don't know, for this movie, it didn't seem right. It didn't seem right to end it that way, particularly since like the way, like, the guy who, I'm not going to tell you who kills her, but the guy who kills her, our hero finds her body still in the dude's basement, like not hidden or anything, just like in there, and she's been dead for like probably like a week at this point, and he hasn't even like buried it or anything. Like fucking hell, dude, you know, yeah, you're just asking for trouble there. And then his death is kind of just happens, and you're like, oh, okay, well, you know, like I don't care that she died, but it's kind of like once she dies, there's no kind of like, yeah, we got the bad guy, and it doesn't even do kind of like a Nocturnal Animal spin on it, where he gets the bad guy, but then, you know, he dies as well. It was nothing like that. It just, I don't know. And then what actually happens after that, the actual ending, is just sort of, I don't know, it's just dumb, and it didn't need to be there. Although I am glad that there's a certain implication with the pedophile guy where I thought it was going to end, and I was like, wow, that's actually fucking awful. So I'm actually glad they didn't do that. But at the same time, I was done by the movie probably even way before that point. But yeah, basically, other than that, I mean, don't fucking watch this movie is pretty much my recommendation to you. You could probably watch two movies or a movie and like an hour episode of a TV show in the same time that you've watched this movie, and it'll probably even be longer, and it'll probably not feel as long as this fucking movie did. This feels longer than the fucking like first Hobbit movie, and that shit was bloated. Yeah, no, don't watch this. It's not very good. I don't think lots of people are giving it like ones. I don't think it's deserving of like a 1 star. If I were to give it a rating, I would say like maybe 2.5, just because the special effects are pretty decent for the kind of like budget that it is, because it's not a super big budget film. It's a Netflix thing. So the budget, you know, like they kind of did well there. It's well shot. Like I said, everybody tries their hardest, even though I think most, the two main actors were miscast, but they both try their best with the material. And even though I hate Paul Rudd in this movie, he does, you know, he's trying his hardest, and it's not his fault that, you know, he can't play that kind of character. Applaud him for trying. He's doing something different at least. And like I said, if you cut out 40 minutes of this movie, most of the Paul Rudd, Justin Theroux stuff, all the fucking weird pervert subplot stuff, cut that out, and you've got a pretty, you know, sort of dumb, pretty looking, you know, kind of schlocky cyberpunk film. And that's what, you know, cyberpunk should be schlocky. It should be. Blade Runner is actually kind of different to most cyberpunk, because most cyberpunk books and comics and shit like that, you know, they're pretty schlocky. It's a pretty schlocky B-grade sort of genre, which is probably why you don't see a lot of cyberpunk movies getting made anymore. But, you know, yeah, the soundtrack's good, because it's David Bowie's Heroes, but done as a symphonic cover. And this video's gone on for way too long now, so I'm just going to end it there. Don't watch this fucking movie, whatever you do.